The last thing you want to be doing for your rookie drafts is making these very common mistakes. A bad rookie draft can set you back no matter the trajectory you're on, and take what can be a really good experience and a good building block process for your team into a negative situation. But I got a handful of mistakes you should be avoiding, and we'll be getting into those very shortly. But if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment down below what mistakes you maybe made in the past, maybe some of these mistakes that we discussed today. Let everybody else know what other mistakes have not been mentioned, so we can all get that much better as a community. And speaking of community, if you want to get access to the best community in Dynasty Fantasy Football, in my opinion, check out patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind for a free 7-day trial. Get in our Discord server, hang out with the rest of the community, and get your questions answered 24/7 and get you as prepared as possible for your rookie drafts. And last things last, before I get into it, if you want help with your rookie drafts and you haven't checked it out already, check out the rookie draft guide we have in the pinned comment below or the YouTube description box. If you're a gold member at Patreon, you can get that guide for free, but check out the details in the pinned comment and the YouTube description box below to find out more details. But with all the promo in the books, let's get to the content that you all came for. The first mistake that we have to get into, even though it's so regularly discussed, people still make this common error of drafting for need over best player available. This is a great way to get yourself in trouble and leave value on the board, which is the last thing we want to be doing when we're drafting. We want to be soaking up the value of other people drafting for need over best player available, and then soak up that value as it falls down the board to us. I get it. You want to fill the needs and feel like you're really improving your team by addressing those needs in the draft and drafting players that fill those needs. But the proper process to make this happen is by finding your way to the draft picks where those selections make the most sense. Whether that's trading down or trading up depends on where your picks land, as well as the needs you have in your roster compared to this draft that we're in right now, or future drafts. For example, if you need a running back in this class, you should be looking to get to the late first, early to mid second if you want to grab somebody like Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson. You should not be drafting either of these guys in the mid first, even though you might really need a running back. Fact of the matter is, quarterbacks are too good and wide receivers are too good to pass up on to go get one of those running backs that early. If you need a top tier wide receiver in this class, or even just some wide receiver depth in this class, well, you're in luck. For a top tier, top of the line wide receiver, you need to be in the top 6 picks. That more than likely will net you one of the big 3 in Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, or Malik Neighbors. But if you just need some depth, a late first or second round pick will probably do. Admittedly, it's kind of hard, in my opinion, to overdraft wide receiver or draft them too early, reach down tiers, etc. in this draft because we have so many good wide receivers until you start reaching into day 3 wideouts over day 2 wideouts, which is a discussion we'll have a little later. If you need a quarterback, I think you need to be in the top 7 of this draft if you want to secure a bona fide year 1 starter that can help you now and be a building block for development over the course of time. And if you need that tight end, the late first again is where you're going to be looking for Brock Bowers. We've seen him slide in some of our drafts. I've seen him slide in some of mine. Not so much any tight end premium leagues, but the landing spot is not that sexy for a lot of people, and this has him sliding that little bit down boards. Now, the next tight end up that you're going to be drafting is kind of up for debate. So far, we've seen Ben Sinnott sliding down boards way more than I think he should. If you're a fan of the channel, you know I'm a huge Ben Sinnott fan. So when I see him sliding to the late second, early third, when he's the clear next best tight end on the board, especially when you take into consideration he was the only other day 2 tight end that we believe to be fantasy relevant outside of Tip Ryman, old Tippy, I'd be expecting him to go in the early second just because of how quickly tight ends like to rise up the board, especially when there's this drought of not great tight ends in this class. But he's going anywhere from the mid second all the way to the late second and even the early third. Some rewinders in the Discord have shouted him out, even going as late as the 308, which is just madness. At the end of the day, with picks in our rookie drafts, we want to get the picks that fulfill a need at the best possible drafting location that fit best player available and fill a need for us. That's what you call a win-win. So even if the player doesn't necessarily fit a need, be sure you're drafting best player available and trade for need later. You can just about always trade for need. You can't always trade for the best player. Ultimately, let your needs dictate where you need to be in the draft, not what you're drafting with the draft capital you already have, unless it already makes sense where you're at. As I touched on, I think this mistake rears its ugly head the most when we're talking about this running back class. The class is pretty scarce, and I think it's going to be very easy to want to reach down the board to grab a Jonathan Brooks, to grab a Trey Benson. Maybe you're higher on Marshawn Lloyd than consensus, but keep in mind, consensus is very low on Marshawn Lloyd, so you can probably wait to grab Marshawn Lloyd till later. Blake Corum didn't get the sexiest landing spot, going in behind Kyron Williams for now, and then you're left with a lot of day 3 running backs, which again, don't overdraft day 3, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later. If you really want to seek out a fix for running back in this draft class, you're probably looking to trade out as opposed to actually drafting a running back from this class. You might get some help, but you're definitely not going to get that running back 1 crown jewel that you want out of this draft class like we were able to last year with a Bijan or a Jahmyr Gibbs. Running through another quick mistake is not utilizing a tier-based draft strategy. Whether you craft your own tiered rankings or use someone else's that you trust, you should operate in drafts with some sort of tier-based rankings, which mine and Nate's rookie rankings are available in the gold tier as well, along with that rookie draft guide that you get with your membership. Details in the YouTube description box below, as mentioned previously. This is just one method of kind of keeping yourself honest and kind of policing that first mistake that we discussed already. This should keep you from reaching down the boards and saying, hey, this is what my tier looks like. I have several different positions here. This is where it is. This is what I need to be drafting from. And if I have a need within this tier, that's okay to draft from. Otherwise, pick best player or best value available. This can also be looked at to highlight trade down opportunities or trade up opportunities, especially when you compare your own tiers or tiers of someone you trust, like I mentioned previously, with the tiers of common consensus rankings. Whenever I've sat and stood my ground and drafted where I was or seen a league mate do the same, where I'm not moving around the board, I'm rarely happy with the takeaway that comes from that rookie draft. Not trying to maneuver around the draft board is a huge mistake. I'm all about taking the value as it's given, but the last thing I want to do is just sit and take all of my picks that I am coming into the draft with. You need to be fluid at the end of the day and be keeping an eye out for opportunities to trade up or trade down. This definitely ties in with the previous point, as I mentioned, but take the time and input the effort of moving around the board as needed when opportunities present themselves. Are players being reached on and pushing other players that you rate more highly down the draft board so that your tiers get extended that little bit? Does this create trade down opportunities for you where you can start picking at the end of a tier and pick up that little bit more value by sliding back just a couple picks? Or is it a case of where your draft queue is drying up quickly? This is a time to trade up. But I will say, if you are going to stay and pick, and this is part of why I want to trade up versus staying and seeing what happens, don't draft players you don't like or don't believe in just because the value suggests that. This becomes a point then to trade out for other possibilities, whether it's future draft capital or proven commodities like veteran players. And by veteran, that doesn't mean old. That just means not a rookie. Speaking of opportunities, listen to your league mates. If you listen hard enough and well enough, they'll almost tell you exactly what you need to do to make the most of your rookie draft and every interaction you have with your league mates. But I totally understand some league mates are just complete putzes. Putz? Putz-eyes? What's the plural of putz? If your league is active, oftentimes your league mates will shout out opportunities for you to take advantage of. Keep an eye out for things like, shoot, it's going to take me another minute because I just got sniped. This to me equals, hey, this pick is more accessible. You have an opportunity to come trade up for this pick. Send me some offers. Or even when they just say, hey, I'm open to trading this pick. If they're at a spot that ends a tier for you where you're going to miss out on the next tier value of players and you want to get in on that player before we see that drop off, all the more reason to go knock on that person's door and see what you can get done about a trade up or maybe a full on trade in. And then if they did get sniped, this opens the door for future conversations. Well, you don't want to get sniped again, do you? Obviously, that's more of a trade down case. Hey, come up and get your guy that you're pining for. Once you learn the league mate language, you'll open yourself up to a lot more opportunities in your rookie drafts and in your league in general. One thing that I think is a huge mistake for any dynasty manager in a rookie draft, new or old, whether you've been around the block or you're having your first rookie draft, is not seeing what proven veterans, proven commodities that you can get for your rookie draft capital. We can all acknowledge that leading up to your rookie drafts, rookie pick value is super inflated and veteran value, non-rookies, is super suppressed. Outside of that top tier of guys, rookies are the new thing. Take advantage of that rookie fever. Whether you're a competitive team or even in a rebuild, you should look to kick the tires on what non-rookie additions you can make with your rookie draft capital. Are you set at quarterback or you don't believe in the prospects in the Superflex draft, but you could use another stud wide receiver for your rebuild that you can go and trade for? Think of it like this. With every rookie pick you have, you're really just looking to add the best asset available to your team. Do not limit that to just be on the draft board. Ask yourself with each pick, instead of drafting X player at X position, what player at the same position can I trade this pick for? The answers may surprise you, and like I said, take full advantage of that rookie fever. This might be an unpopular opinion, but the my guy mentality drives me nuts. To be clear, I want everyone to get their guy and have players that they're rooting for on their rosters. That's why I love Dynasty Fantasy Football. I get to acquire a bunch of players that I like and want to root for. And having those guys I want to root for makes it that much more enjoyable for me. But there is nothing I dislike more than somebody justifying reaching dramatically on a player because, well, I got my guy. Once you've acclimated to value-based drafting, this will be as frustrating for you as it is for me. And while, hey, I like when my league mates make mistakes and I get to reap the rewards, but I'm here to help y'all. This goes back to the first point of drafting for best player available compared to need. If you're drafting at a spot appropriate for that player, be my guest. Go get the player you want. Go get the person you want to cheer for, the player for your favorite team, your new franchise quarterback, whoever the heck it is, whoever your favorite my guy is that got day 3 draft capital that we all know won't be relevant in 2 to 3 years. And that's not saying to take a dig at anybody, but I know that's happened to me. And at the end of the day, if you did all you could to get to the right spot and that player goes early anyway and gets overdrafted anyway, it is what it is. You have to remember that just because that player is drafted once doesn't mean that player will never be accessible to you again. And hey, that's part of the fun of joining other leagues too. Monitor that player, see how things go, see if they have a rocky start to their rookie year. Does the door open for maybe even buying that player at a cheaper cost? One thing with rookies, sometimes people will dig their heels in, but if they weren't super sold on that player to begin with, there's a lot of dynasty managers out there that will want to just get out while the getting's good and take whatever they can get. I'm not saying you're going to get a guy for pennies on the dollar, but I am saying when rookie struggles hit and players don't meet expectations, managers sweat a little bit. Let's get into some more uber specific examples for this year. Don't pass up on well-drafted talent just because of what is perceived to be a bad situation. If you believe in a player and the draft capital is good, the landing spot's good, but maybe they're buried on a depth chart. Situations change faster than talent does. And in my opinion, a good example of this that maybe we haven't given enough credit to in 2024 rookie drafts is Ricky Pearsall. Now, I'm not going to stand here and act like I love the prospect of Ricky Pearsall, but at the end of the day, I can acknowledge he was a first-round pick, incredible athletic profile, and was ultimately drafted to one of the better teams in the NFC and is now currently buried on a depth chart for now. But there's definitely a path to relevancy on a very good 49ers roster in a very good offensive system. And honestly, I think you could do a little bit worse in the mid-second and sometimes even the late second. Now, there's a flip side of this coin. Don't overrate subpar talent because of a good landing spot and or good draft capital. I know we have a year's worth of hindsight now, but I think Quentin Johnson was a good example of this last year. A ton of red flags glared across his profile. But hey, he was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft to be Justin Herbert's eventual number 1 weapon, possibly. But despite the red flags and being drafted behind 2 very good NFL wide receivers, Quentin Johnson was still taken very highly in drafts last year. And ultimately, with the high rookie draft capital, pretty high expectations were placed on the guy. But ultimately, once opportunity arose, he fell short of expectations thanks to that lack of refinement. And now onto a 2024 draft comparison of this, and a player who I think could fit that bill, full pun intended. This year is Keon Coleman. Now, to be clear, I don't think he's the next Quentin Johnson, and I don't think he's necessarily going to bust out. But I can look at the player, look at the prospect, and acknowledge that he is not a perfect bulletproof prospect. And just because he landed on Josh Allen's team, on the Buffalo Bills, in a rather wide open wide receiver room, when Josh Allen picked him to be that guy, does not mean that he is going to be flawless and ascend to wide receiver one-dom within his first year or anything like that. You can't just look at all of the upside with these prospects. You have to take things with a grain of salt and also look at the floor. And when players lack refinement, that floor is pretty dramatic. But you add on to that and you have these reports coming out that this is going to be a more even keel wide receiver room without necessarily a funneled wide receiver one like they had with Stephon Diggs, who is a high demander of targets. And even reports that the offense may run primarily through Dalton Kincaid when you're talking about receivers. Great for Dalton Kincaid, not so great for the rest of the receiver room in Buffalo. I'm not even saying don't draft him. I'm just saying draft wisely and with caution. I even took him in a couple of my drafts already, but I took him at the 206 and the 207 respectively, not in the early second or the late first round. Something I feel we really need to do with this draft class is temper expectations for day 3 players. I know over the last couple years we've had some hits come out of day 3. But outliers don't define a rule, and they don't create a rule. They're just the exception to one. It's no secret that day 3 drafted players have a very low hit rate, and drafting them earlier than you should just because you like a player or you think they have more opportunity than you'd expect is a recipe for disaster. As much as I loved him in the pre-draft process, Troy Franklin seems to be the greatest example here because he's crept all the way up into the late second round of rookie drafts over day 2 picks, such as Ben Sinnott, Blake Corum, Roman Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd, Jermaine Burton, Jalen McMillan, and even somebody who I don't love but was a day 2 pick in Malachi Corley. The NFL thought he was the 17th best wide receiver in the class for a reason. And if he struggles to adapt to the NFL or whatever made him that 17th best wide receiver in the class, it's that much more likely that he gets left by the wayside. Again, I'm not saying don't draft the guy. I'm just saying don't draft him over guys who have better draft capital, maybe as good of opportunity in possibly better offenses, and just realize that, hey, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round rookie picks are typically best served as throw-in pieces for improving 1st and 2nd round picks, or drafting players that have hype upside to flip later for improved draft capital in the future, or to bridge the gap with veteran deals that aren't that far apart. One of the things that I've gotten on myself about over the past couple years especially is passing on players I believe in just because the consensus doesn't like them. This goes back to the whole my guy thing and is almost too much in the other direction. At the end of the day, if I miss on a player, I want it to be because I missed on that player, not because I bought into something half-cocked and didn't really believe in someone's reasoning for X reason why this player is going to be better than that player, because then I can own up to it and refine my process that much better than, hey, maybe I need to listen to somebody else because that person was wrong. While ultimately, I hope that they can acknowledge that, hey, they were wrong too, and they're going to try to refine their process. I know I've been wrong plenty. I know I've been right a lot too, with players like CJ Stroud, Kyron Williams, although now we have to kind of test that theory with Blake Corum coming to town. A player who, oddly enough, I also really like. Even if I don't like a player that you want to draft, you believe in them more than me, you have your reasons, go get the guy, but draft appropriately. I'll never fault anybody for having their own reasoning and their own thought process for wanting to go draft somebody. Don't be afraid to call your own shots and take your own shots. This next one might be more of a general rule than necessarily a draft rule, but if at all possible, avoid entering the offseason or your rookie draft with little or no draft capital. I've made this mistake in one of my leagues, and I'm feeling the pain of not really adding much to my team this offseason because I haven't been able to get a lot of deals done because I don't have draft capital to be flexible with. I don't have draft capital I can play with. I've called it the cool kids club before. Once you're in the cool kids club, once you have draft capital, you have a seat at the table. It's a lot easier to move at the table as opposed to being in the background and trying to get into the table, to sit at the table. But without draft picks, I can't add rookies. I don't feel like my roster is getting that much better, even though my roster isn't old or decrepit or anything like that. It's ready to go for another competitive push, but I went all in too hard, and I really am going to be advising against that when we get into the regular season. Keep something in the tank for yourself because, man, once you get to rookie drafts, it's a lot less fun being on the outside looking in of your rookie draft. And again, like I said, I don't feel like my roster is improving, and I don't want anybody to be in the position where it's like, well, I feel like I have to blow it up now to just get some draft capital on my roster. Let's just be a little bit wiser and not, spend everything to go all in to try to win a championship. Let's go all in responsibly and keep some for the road ahead. Draft capital being that is. And once you have it, possibly use it to trade for other pieces. If that's how you lost out of draft capital and you're able to trade for proven commodities like we've talked about already in this video, by all means, be my guest. But don't be the guy walking into the offseason without any draft capital because you're in for a world of hurt and you were just going to be kind of bored sitting on the sidelines. And the last one I got for you is the failure to adapt. At the end of the day, no matter how many times we overanalyze our drafts, predict what players or managers are going to pick which player, we're never going to get it 100% right. Someone's going to make dramatic reaches. Somebody's going to pick a player ahead of you that you expected to go later. Maybe it was your favorite sleeper. Maybe it was who you were expecting to draft with your very next pick, and you didn't think anybody else was on him at this range. This is why having the tools ahead of you, knowing who to draft, knowing who not to draft, knowing your tiers, knowing what you could possibly trade picks out of for are such important things. Having resources available to you, whether it's a draft guide, whether it's your own rankings, whether it's someone else's rankings, whether it's a Discord. There are a ton of community Discords out there. If you're not in ours and you don't want to join ours for whatever reason, I highly recommend checking out ours, but get in one. There are so many out there that you can bounce ideas off of and get your draft to be that much better by just asking and reaching out for help. But hey, that is going to be it for me today. I hope that y'all enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below what mistakes you've made. If you've made any of these mistakes we've talked about today that you're never going to make again, what other mistakes are out there? Let all the people know. We are a community trying to make everyone better at their rookie drafts. And if you want help with your rookie drafts, there's a couple ways to do that. Check out patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Check out some bonus podcasts while you're there with that $5 tier. Get that rookie draft guide included with your $10 tier sign up, your gold tier sign up, along with mine and Nate's rookie rankings, as well as my own Dynasty rankings, and of course, our Dynasty Rewind rookie Superflex ADP. And another way to help improve your roster, check out a roster review if you are interested in having your team looked over by myself, Mike, or Zach. Check out the pinned comment below or the YouTube description box for details for getting a roster review, as well as any other way to support the team if you're looking to find ways to support. But with all that said, all the promo in the books, I appreciate the heck out of you guys for watching, but I'm going to get the heck on out of here. I'll see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.